All right, coming completely out of nowhere, we got the announcement that the main event and really the entire card for the UFC's first ever event in Saudi Arabia has been announced, with a battle between Khamzat Chimaev and Robert Whittaker to see who the next #1 contender at middleweight is. Completely unexpected, but this is a great matchup because when you really take a look at how both of these guys fight, they're kind of complete opposites. Robert Whittaker, one of the best strikers in the history of the middleweight division, one of the few guys that's able to effectively use a blitzing karate-style footwork. And although he doesn't have the most crazy knockout power you've ever seen, the guy's more than capable of finishing anyone on any given night. And although we rarely see him with an offensive, grappling, heavy approach to really any of his fights, outside of the rematch versus Adesanya, the guy is a consummate grappler with, I'm pretty sure he has a history of being on the Australian national team as a wrestler. And if there's one thing we know about Robert Whittaker, it's that the guy has amazing cardio. Then we have Khamzat Chimaev, on the other hand, who was an absolute buzzsaw from the opening bell. Comes out right away like he's shot out of a cannon, usually goes for that double leg takedown. And no matter who he's fought up to this point, he usually gets it. And while we love to think about Khamzat as more of a grappler, the guy has good boxing, good straights coming out of both stances. On the feet, he likes to keep things pretty simple, but also pretty effective. And while he's proven that he can be dominant in many different matchups, one thing we don't know about him is his cardio. Not only have we yet to see him go a full 5 rounds, but we've multiple times now seen him look pretty gassed in the end of a 3-round fight. So what's my prediction? I actually think the odds of this fight are pretty decent. Let me look at them right now, actually. So it looks like the odds are plus 170 for Khamzat, minus 200 for Robert Whittaker, and I think that makes sense. Both of these guys have spent a portion of their career fighting at 170 pounds. But when you look at Robert Whittaker, the guy has spent pretty much the entirety of the last decade as a true middleweight. Whereas even though Khamzat has had a couple fights in the past at 185 pounds, this is the first tried and true world-class middleweight he's ever been matched up with. That being said, let's not forget what happened the last time Khamzat fought at 185 pounds. One of the most insane one-punch knockouts I've ever seen. And yes, Gerald Meerschaert is not exactly a world-renowned middleweight, but the guy's very solid. And we've seen him go up against other up-and-coming potential stars at 185 pounds, Joe Pyfer, Andre Petrosky. And while yes, Pyfer was able to get him out of there early in the fight, there's a clear difference when you look at the cartoonish, almost bizarre knockout where Khamzat was able to completely shut his entire body down with the first strike he threw in the entire fight. My point being, even though Khamzat hasn't fought in the best guys in the world, when you see the way he takes them out, especially in some of his more insane finishes, he's still getting them out of there in world-class fashion. But when you factor in the fact that Robert Whittaker has really the most experience at the UFC level and at the high end of the middleweight division than anyone else at 185 pounds. So it's really not hard to see why, even though it's not crazy odds, Whittaker is and should be the favorite. So who do I think will win? I got Khamzat. I'll be honest, part of it is kind of riding the hype train right now. I mean, it's hard to doubt him based on the fight with Li Jingliang, the knockout of Gerald Meerschaert, the complete and total domination of Kevin Holland. One of the big criticisms of Khamzat is 2 fights in specific. The fight against Gilbert Burns, where it was pretty razor thin going into that last round, and then the fight against Usman, where even though Khamzat dominated in the first round, some people argue that Usman might have won the next 2 rounds. I do think you got to cut Khamzat a little bit of slack when it comes to that, because even though it was a last-minute replacement fight bringing in Usman, it was also last-minute for Khamzat, a guy who prepared to fight Paulo Costa, who, let's be honest, has a complete and total different style than Usman. Chances are, Khamzat had to go into that fight and completely throw out his entire game plan. And while, yes, it wasn't the most in shape, well-trained Usman we've ever seen, we've also never seen someone dominate the wrestling exchanges like that against Usman. And with Khamzat having even more time to fill out his frame and to be a true 185er, and with him knowing that Whittaker is far and away the best guy that he's ever fought, I think there's a good chance that we see the best version of Khamzat that we've ever seen. And I think at the very least, in the first round, Khamzat's going to come with a complete and total tidal wave of grappling. And even though Whittaker probably knows that's what's coming, I don't know if he's going to be prepared for it, because I can't honestly say in good faith that I believe Whittaker is a better defensive grappler than Kamaru Usman. So if Khamzat goes in for a takedown, gets his hands locked, and gets Robert to the ground, I think there's a very good chance that the fight can end early. But the farther the fight goes, knowing how good Whittaker's cardio is and how amazing he is on the feet, if Whittaker's able to escape the first round, similar to how Usman was, I think he's going to have a lot of success in the striking department in the second, third rounds, and so on, like Usman did. Except I think the variety, the speed, and the pressure that Whittaker's going to be able to put on Khamzat is going to be almost as surprising as Khamzat's grappling is to a lot of the guys that he fights. I think while Khamzat's grappling is clearly on another level, at the very least compared to the majority of the middleweight division, and definitely compared to everyone Khamzat fought up to this point, Whittaker's striking is going to be on a completely different level. In all honesty, I think this is pretty much a 50-50 fight. And for a main event on ABC, I mean, though there's no belt in the line, this matchup is just as good, if not better, than what we get on many pay-per-views. So this June, we'll find out. Is it time for the young, hungry fighters at the bottom of the middleweight division to get their crack at the title? Or are the vets like Robert Whittaker here to stay? And I guess this June in Saudi Arabia, we'll find out. Thanks for watching.